Thanks for having me. Okay. Thank you all for being patient with me as we deal with this together. Okay. So, hi.
We lost 20 minutes there, so you have to do the whole thing in 15 minutes.
Got you.
No.
I'm going to speak very quickly. Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Ajuna Kyaruzi. Excited to talk to you about what romance stories taught me about instant management. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to talk a lot about what rom-coms taught me not to do about instant management. So I'm going to focus mostly on movies because I think that there might be a bit more shared experience in the movie space, but I love both novels and movies in this space. But I'll chat with you a little bit about myself. Matt covered a lot of this, but I work in DevRel at Datadog. I focus on SRE and DevOps, which is why I'm here. My passion for instant management started when I was doing SRE at Google. And even after I started doing more product SWE work, I still really enjoyed being on call as much as one can. And I also, of course, really enjoy rom-coms. That's why I'm talking about them. My favorite one is Pretty Woman. We got a couple of Pretty Woman fans. Anyone like rom-coms in general? Yay. We got a couple. Anyone not like them at all? Okay. It's okay, you don't have to spare my feelings. You can just not listen to that part of it. Okay, just one or two hands, that's fine. So just to set the stage, I always prefer to start off with defining things and make sure we're all on the same page. So what is instant management? I define instant management as the process of effectively, oopsie, I meant to take this off like a while back. Okay, now you can see my face. So I define instant management as the process of effectively responding to outages and incidents with minimal further disruption to the users of your service. So this is everything that is involved from when something goes wrong in your system all the way to users not longer being impacted by that thing to you deciding that it's no longer breaking things and now you can go back to doing other work that you had going on. So to kind of put this into a more real life example, let's picture it, you're on call, right? It's a Friday night, you're having a fun, maybe on call appropriate amounts of fun, okay? Nothing too crazy. And then your pager goes off. Hopefully not this aggressively. I wanted to actually play the sound that played when I was being paged, but I was worried half of y'all would be on call and would leave the room. So I was just gonna go with this. But essentially then you start the instant response process, right? Some sort of system alerted, it decided to page you, and you were actually the right person that should be paged for that thing. You looked into it and it was actually a problem, so you declared an incident, right? And then you got yourself together to figure out what went wrong, right? The instant remediation process sort of starts. You try a bunch of different things, you roll back some changes, roll forward some changes, you think it's DNS, you don't think it's DNS and it's actually DNS. Whatever the case is, you fix what's going on, the users are no longer impacted, you stare at it for a little bit longer very suspiciously to make sure that it's not just playing with you, it's actually stopped whatever it was, and then you say it's complete and then do the instant review process, right? The postmortems, post-instant documents, post-instant meetings, whatever the case, and then you're done and you repeat. Hopefully not that like right away, but you get a little bit of a break. But that's all what I define as instant management. So why rom-coms, right? What on earth is connecting these two other than me specifically telling Datadog that I could come talk to y'all about this so they could fly me here? There are a few things that connect the two, but first why I connect them is I like rom-coms. Well, I like them now. When I was younger, if it didn't explode, I was not into it, right? I needed all of that amount of feedback loop in terms of what I watched. And then in the past couple of years, you know, I'm not as big of a fan of the explosions. I still watch a lot of them. I just watched the third Thor movie. It was good. Not as many explosions as I would like, but I was a fan of it. But mostly what I really like about rom-coms is that they're quite formulaic. You can really picture, okay, this is gonna happen, then this is gonna happen, then this is gonna happen. And for some of you that might sound boring, but for me that sounds great, okay? My brain is just dead by the end of the day a lot of times, and I love being able to just know what's going to happen and just not having too much stress with whatever I'm dealing with. When I was younger, my mom used to watch the same movies over and over again, and she said that the reason she did it was she liked being able to fall asleep and wake up and know what was going on with the movie, and I had just become the same person. We all turn into our parents in some way or the other. Part of that is also just decision fatigue. You know, I can't decide what I want to eat, and I can't decide what I want to watch a lot of the times, and just knowing that I'm going to have just the right amount of like angst watching my thing is great. Been watching Homeland with my partner recently. Stressful, okay? Great thing, very stressful. Rom-coms are where it's at. And they don't all have to be dramatic. I'm not talking about Titanic. This is more rom than com. We can all argue about whether or not they could both fit on that board door thing. They could, okay? Whatever it took, but it can be quite casual. Here are some of my favorites. Netflix is doing really good in my book right now with their selection of newer rom-coms, but I like the older ones too. Pretty Woman's there towards the middle, Coming to America, 10 Things I Hate About You, all fantastic. I chat a bit about the formula, but it's also a known secret, right? Some of this is storytelling, but it's also just like they meet and it's a meet cute, right? There's so many different tropes about whether or not they like each other or whatever. Someone spilled coffee on the other person and they're mad because they're in their small town, whatever it is, right? Then they hate each other, then they like each other, then they don't communicate correctly, so that's a big issue, then they resolve it. And yeah, this is storytelling, but it's a little bit more than that. They're just all of the different tropes that just make it great, right? They're always running through airports. And you might be like, Ajuna, no, TSA doesn't let you do this anymore. They do. 2018, Crazy Rich Asians, he's on a plane proposing, and yes, he's both rich and Asian, that's part of the whole movie, but they're on this plane, right? He paid to be on this plane to propose. He could have done this anywhere else a little bit earlier, but they still do this. And they all have great lines. This is a classic scene from Pretty Woman. If you haven't watched this, please just go watch it so you understand what this is. But if you want to find out more, I'm happy to chat about it later. Okay, now that I've like rapidly tried to sell rom-coms to you for a little bit, let me try to connect the two a bit better. You might be thinking that instant management is more about tech than people, especially the way that I defined it earlier. And to be honest, that's not really the case. A lot of the things that we think about as the processes for instant management come from firefighting. So y'all are all on the West Coast, or at least you're all here right now, and the southern part of this coast happens to deal with a lot of wildfires. And the same was true in 1970 when the Laguna fire started in the mid to late September. This was like the third largest fire in California till the 2000s, so it was quite impactful. It lasted 14 days. It covered over like 700 different kilometers squared of area. It burned over 300 homes, and 16 people lost their lives, with a lot of other people being injured. And it was quite impactful towards the area. And after the fire ended, they sat down and were like, what happened, right? How do we do better? What went wrong with this particular fire? Some of it was just that it was so large that obviously it was hard to contain, but it also took a lot of different groups of people to contain. And as such, it crossed multiple jurisdictions of firefighting groups. And they could not communicate with each other. And I mean this literally. They did not have the right radio frequencies and did not literally know how to talk to the other person. They had different terminologies and technologies, and it was just very, very tricky. And they realized that even with all the resources, which they did have, the problems that happened that caused this fire to last as long as it did were related to a lack of management deficiencies and lack of communication and tactics, right? So all the fire chiefs sat down afterwards and made this organization called FireScope, which stands for the Firefighting Resources of Southern California Organized for Potential Emergencies. And I am very happy that they have come up with such a great acronym, because saying all of that is a mouthful. But the purpose of this agency was to think about the issues that they had that made the fire so bad, right? all of the lack of accountability, the poor communications. The other issues that they had was there was no hierarchy, right? Who do we listen to? So even their most skilled folks did what they thought was best, which duplicated a bunch of effort. Without coordination and technology and terminology, the incident really just struggled to get off the ground. As a result of this organization, they made what is called the Instant Command System, which might sound familiar to a lot of you. So the Instant Command System is a standardized approach to command, control, and coordination of emergency response. And what it does, it provides a common hierarchy within which responders from different agencies can be effective. So there are two major components of the Instant Command System. One is that every incident has an incident commander, and they are the main point person for the incident, especially to external folks. The other major part of the Instant Command System is that everyone reports to one person. So you should not be getting conflicting information. Information should just be flowing through one person, and that person will be flowing up to the incident commander through one person as well, if not the incident commander themselves. And obviously, depending on who is implementing this and which agencies, they have a bunch of other things that they've added to that, including us in tech. So in the National Incident Management System, which has rolled into the FEMA in the US and other organizations around the world, has a bunch of other things that we're not using, like a logistics coordinator or a safety officer talking about operations and finances, whereas we probably have subject matter experts, communications folks, which that one is definitely more general, but communications happens in all incidents. And whatever the case, you choose which ones that you need for what you're dealing with. Fire services definitely detected a lot of pain points and figured out what worked for them. And we've definitely borrowed from that because there's a lot of similarities there. There's a great SRECon talk talking more about other ways that fire services and incidents connect. Tanya Riley has this one called The History of Fire Escapes, which is fantastic. There's a lot of great things that we can continue to borrow from firefighting, especially around the prevention, detection of fires, just all of the work that they do to make sure to prevent the fires from happening, from fire codes and all of that we are already doing, but maybe there's a few more analogies there that I think are really cool. So if you're curious about that, that's an awesome one. So there's a lot of things that these incidents have in common, right? There is the incident command, as we've talked about, but usually it's a surprise, right? No one is expecting an incident. Even if you had a rollout that you declared maybe a lower scale incident for, if it goes out of control, you still weren't expecting that, right? And time really matters. You're trying to make sure you respond quickly because your resources are changing, people are being affected. All of that is happening and you're trying to get it done as quickly as possible. So trying back to connect the two, we have this incident response management flow chart that I sort of built out for you. As I watch movies, and especially my favorite rom-coms, I'm like, oh, that kind of looks a little bit familiar, and was able to sort of have the rom-com fit into that too, where obviously though, so the thing starts, things go well, things go badly, and then it resolves, right? So where do rom-coms get it wrong? What are the things that have me shaking my fist at a cloud the most as I watch these things, right? And as to take one into specification, I want to talk about the movie 27 Dresses. So if you haven't watched it, 27 Dresses is a movie from the mid-2000s by Katherine Heigl, who definitely took over from some of the pioneers of rom-coms from the 90s of Julia Roberts and Meg Ryan. But anyway, the movie is about her being a bridesmaid 27 times. So she wears the dresses 27 times. That's what the title's from. Which, oh my God, she has 27 best friends who like her enough to have her in her wedding, but whatever. It's a negative thing, because always the bridesmaid, never the bride, whatever the case. So she meets James Marsden, who's the lead male actor. Some of these are very heteronormative, I apologize. But she meets James Marsden, who's her co-lead in this movie, and he's a writer, and he wants to write about this woman who's been in 27 weddings. And he doesn't tell her that he's a writer. strike one. And they fall in love because that's the movie, that's the rom part. And then things go disastrously wrong, that's the com part. And she gets mad at him because he writes an article about her, and then, chaos ensues, but they figure it out. The way that they get it wrong is with these, no one takes responsibility, right? Which some of it sort of makes sense. You can sort of say, like, okay, it was totally his fault. The movie definitely is a bit more fuller than I am describing. But these are human interactions. It's a lot harder to definitely, with like romantic connections, to say this specific, the blame specifically lies here, or this is the person solely responsible to fix it. And that makes things hard because pride gets in the way, among other things. The other part is all of these build up. Like, when I love watching the movie and trying to figure out, like, okay, what is gonna be the thing that's gonna make them, like, in 30 minutes fight? Because you can very much see that if they just stopped and talked at any moment before that mark, they could definitely just stop it. Because if he told her when they met that he was a writer, then she wouldn't be as hurt that he wrote about her. There were other things, but you can very much see this sort of build up happen. Another part is communication. A lot of people joke that the main issue with rom-coms is it's always miscommunication. They're always talking to someone else, they don't hear each other correctly, they're always talking to the best friend, and it causes them to have the dramatic scene where they're sitting on their bed eating ice cream. I'll be honest with you, I have two sat on my bed eating ice cream, mostly after incidents, and I'm cool with that. I'm very happy with the ice cream scene. I love Friends, you gotta talk, but it's never to each other, and that's usually what one of the main issues is happening. Also, after the incident happens or the issue that they have, we never see the review and reflect part of it. They always just like skip a year and they're married or whatever. And I'm sure part of it's like, do we want to see them in therapy? Maybe. But it's a bit trickier, right? Some of it maybe wouldn't be great storytelling, but I'm always just like, did they learn anything, or is there a part 2 to this that's coming up and they're just making me wait for it? And that's how 27 Dresses ended, right? They figure it out, they fall in love, they jump a year later and she's getting married, and she makes all her friends wear all the dresses they made her wear at their weddings. It's very disorganized, but I guess it's cute. It's like full circle or whatever, but I enjoy it. So if I was to write a rom-com, well, knowing what I know about instant management and all the things that annoy me when I watch these, what would I do to get it right? And some of these would make a very short or very crappy rom-com, but I'll talk about them in general. One, I'll definitely introduce an instant commander, right? That's one of the things that we talked about. Just having a person who can stop and be like, this is what we should work on, and that will help us resolve the incident, that leads the charge, would definitely be helpful. Another part of it is definitely the idea of instant severities. I talked about these things building up. In tech, we have a literal chart to help us decide how severe an incident is and how much resources to throw at it when it is more of a larger scale incident, where step 5 is smaller scale, maybe not user impacting. Step 1, step 2 means that no one can access your site and you're making negative money. And how much resources you sort of throw at that really makes a difference. I know that a lot of the places that I've worked at, step 1 and step 2 means that there is a dedicated group of folks who know a lot about how to manage incidents, who jump in to make sure that things get resolved. If only that they know how to update the little banner on the site being like, we're down, right? That can be really hard to get access to. Another part is just instant communication. Being able to just have all of the information about the incident in one place would be great. I have thought about trying to get a Slack group and a Slack chart together when things are going wrong. It would be really weird though to have your romantic partner in a Slack with you as you're trying to describe what's happening. But I've thought about it. But generally the benefit of having it all in one place is just when you need information, you know where to go. If you change instant commanders, it lasts multiple days, hopefully not. You know that there's definitely one source of truth in a place where you can see what they did, what they didn't do, what they tried and didn't work, and sort of roll back. And I use Slack here because at Datadog, we use Datadog and we use our Slack integration. That's where all of our instances are. But there are other places that you can communicate. I've used IRC, you can use chat, whether that's Hangouts or whatever your company uses, as long as it's one place so that you can see it all together, it would make sense. And the postmortems, right? Automating the crap out of them in as much ways as possible. I've definitely been in the case where I've finished an incident and the last thing I want to do is relive it in enough detail to actually learn from it. But obviously we all know we need to write it down somewhere, if only not to make the same mistake that we made trying to remediate it again. So automating it as much as possible so that when you are trying to churn it out, you don't have to go back and actually see when the incident happened, what things were, what services were impacted, what teams, and all of that finer detail that can sort of fall under the cracks. So I've chatted with you a lot about rom-coms and a lot about incident management, and going back to my favorite movies here, whoops, I'm clumsy, I apologize. I'll get that one. Talking about movies here, I know I definitely said that I enjoy both romance stories, both in novel and movie form. And you might have been like, why didn't you talk about books more? A big part of that is some books really are bad, okay? So sometimes you can judge a book by their cover. I have not read these, to be clear. Have I read books like these? Yes. And some of them are a bit harder to sort of describe. The second one from the left there is called Kissing the Coronavirus. It's a story about the coronavirus becoming a human and the scientists working on it, falling in love with it. It's very strange. There's like 4 books. If you do want to go down that track very deeply, you definitely can. But yeah, thanks so much for chatting with me. I'm here all for the conference, so happy to talk about all of the things anytime, but I'll take some time for questions unless I ran out of it.